Let's go!
Yes, sir!
Arkansas fans, I'm going to give you a fun bet at the end of this video that I feel will hit in this game between the Ole Miss Rebels and the Hogs. But let's talk about the biggest challenge ahead of Arkansas, and that, of course, is stopping this Ole Miss offense that every year under Lane Kiffin's been pretty good. So on that play, that was Caden Prescorn, who to me becomes their best weapon if Tre Harris, number 9, is not available for the Rebels. He was not available in this Oklahoma game last week. We'll talk a little bit more about Tre in just a second, but he is probably the best wide receiver in all of college football this season. So to start this game, Ole Miss decided to use their tight ends, right? Lane Kiffin is as good as any at scripting a first 15 plays. And in big games, Lane Kiffin has done a good job jumping out to leads versus really talented teams. But that lead can peter off. So the weirdest thing about Ole Miss this year is their running game, right? They're ninth. Yes, Ole Miss in yards per rush versus Power 5 competition this year. And some of it has, spilled over to the fans when it comes to frustration of who should actually be getting the carry. So this is Henry Parrish. Ulysses Bentley, 24, has been a really good player. Last week he was very ineffective versus Oklahoma. And you'll see that Parrish is the overall better back. So number 21 and Bentley is number 24. Look at this rush right here by Parrish, making 3 guys miss and then having the strength and the wherewithal to turn his body forward and find a way into the end zone. That was a very, very impressive rush. So I want to talk about Tre Harris. His status is up in the air. And there is not a single player in the Southeastern Conference that's more valuable to his team that's a non-quarterback than number 9 for the Rebels, right? They're running this kind of Tennessee wide split RPO action here, and you'll see him break a tackle. So I want to share a stat that also makes a Razorback look pretty good in Andrew Armstrong. Harris is number 1 in all of college football in yards per target, or basically just a simple productivity stat, right? The guy is simply incredible. And I actually didn't say that correctly. It's receiving yards per pass attempt. So basically, Ole Miss is just not the same team. And how do I know this? Well, versus LSU, Tre Harris was healthy in the first half, and Ole Miss was leading in the game. He also had a pretty big drop to start that game. But in the third quarter, he basically gave up. He went into just regular clothing, took his pads off and everything, and as many of you know, LSU ended up winning that game. So, look, this guy is the real deal. He's been, to me, the best receiver in the SEC when healthy. So if he doesn't play, that is a massive victory for the Hogs. And I think this is a play where he ended up getting hurt, right? A little bit of a hip drop-ish kind of tackle. And there you go. Now, as a film study guy, I get asked a lot, what makes a guy like Lane Kiffin so great as a play caller? And it's not necessarily the individual play calls themselves. It's the sequencing of it, right? So in the background, you're watching a 2nd and 5 run, all right? Now, I want you to take a look at not only the run, but what actually happens at the top of the screen here, okay? We'll get to what actually happens on this run, but this is Tre Harris, and this honestly could be any receiver, but watch what Tre Harris does here, all right? He's running, and then he stops right at the sticks, all right? So remember that. Put that in your memory bank. Now let's go to the actual production of the run. It ends up just being a typical run. Now, this is Watkins, 11, who's a decent receiver. This is the biggest disappointment in the SEC. This is Juice Wells, who was at South Carolina, selfishly quit, went to Ole Miss for some NIL opportunities, and he is just flat out stunk this year. So it's a handoff here on 2nd and 5 because Ole Miss likes their numbers, right? You have 5 defensive backs back here, and you only have 6 guys in the box. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have them outnumbered. So you take advantage of that on this play. All right. Ole Miss really good at getting into the right play. Okay. Now, was this some good blocking? Absolutely. But it's better play calling, better play design, and all of that. Now, That is not the genius of Lane Kiffin here. What you will see and what happens next on a second down play is what makes him so damn tough to stop. Now, 2nd and 10. Very similar situation, okay? So, the only difference is the slot receiver went over to this side. Now, remember, on the last second down play, Tre Harris ran a stop. Now, what you'll do here is you'll show a play action run to the left, right? It's in the back of their mind. Say they did it last time on second down. Wasn't even much of a play action fake. And then what does Tre Harris do? Well, it's a stop, all right? It looks just like the play that we just saw. And instead of just stopping, it's a stop and go, all right? You see how that's set up the next play? And the funny thing about Lane Kiffin's play calling is it's so good that it's able to overcompensate for bad offensive line play. This Ole Miss offensive line is decent, right? They're not great. So this play design was so good, and Tre Harris ran the stop and go so good that even while JAXSON DART got hit, it was still able to be completed. And that's what makes Ole Miss so daggum tough to stop. Now, like I said, if Tre Harris does not go, that makes them unfreaking believably stale compared to what they are at full speed. But you see why Ole Miss's offense is so daggum good. Now, let's discuss this Ole Miss defense, okay? The players that you have to look out for are the lower digit players, all right? Chris Paul, a lot of you are familiar with him, obviously the former Razorback. He's been, to me, arguably the best linebacker in the SEC. Tre Harris, a transfer from Alabama, number 9 right here, picks this ball off eventually from Garrett Nussmeier. Number 2, Walter Nolen. He is questionable in this game. 15's a really good defensive end. Number 1, Princely is a very good pass rusher as well. And I want you to see what this defense can do to people. Now, once again, Walter Nolen is probably their best DT, their best defensive lineman. He, like Tre Harris, is questionable, right? But you'll see he eventually penetrates through here and gets his hand right into the path of Garrett Nussmeier and affects it. And Tre Harris, the corner, has been fantastic. There's no other way around it. So from an Arkansas perspective, last week you played the worst defense in the SEC. This week, you're arguably playing the best. You're number 3 in yards per play. One thing I would do against this front is get to the perimeter, right? Since this defensive line is so aggressive and downhill, one thing you could do is go around them, right? And Kentucky had a lot of success in this upset victory at a pistol formation, which is something that Arkansas does like to do. So expect a lot of pistol where the running back is directly behind the quarterback there. You get a nice little option pitch, and Kentucky would go on to score on this drive, right? Arkansas is probably not going to have Jaquindon Jackson, and this is a game where I really feel like the Hogs need him to win. But we'll see if Braylon Russell and Rashad DeBinion step up. It's another run at a pistol, and I like the creativity here from Bush Hamdan. The strength of this formation is to the right, tight end, receiver, really boxed in here, and you're actually running a stretch to the left, all right? I like stretch handoffs because if they are big penetrators, you could see that Walter Nolen blows this play up, but he over-penetrates it, and they have 2 guys in the same gap, and this opens up a huge rushing lane, right? So I would expect a lot of outside zone, outside kind of handoffs, and I think Arkansas could be able to cook in those situations. But here's a problem you can run into, right? If you're going to do these longer developing plays, Ole Miss, like you saw with that interception, their defensive line eventually is going to get home. I mean, they're so talented up front that someone's going to get there, okay? 54, same jersey number as Blackstock, who has taken a lot of heat from Arkansas fans this year. Look at that. Ivy just beats him, and, you know, this isn't bad protection across the way, but it only takes one person, and you get a huge sack. So last year, Arkansas's defense versus Ole Miss played fine, right? Travis Williams actually had a pretty good gameplay, and of course there were a few mistakes mixed in there, in particular on the first drive. But, man, the difference were the turnovers, right? The last 4 of these have been won by the home team, And in each of those games, the away team has just committed some unforgivable turnovers, including the most telegraphed pass maybe in the history of Arkansas football here from KJ. So stay away from that. One other storyline here is under Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss has had a major penalty issue, not only this year, but in the years prior. So this has been a heavily penalized game recently. So that's one other thing to keep an eye out for. But for me, if I were to lean one way, I'm kind of talking myself into the under, right? The best offensive players for both of these teams aren't playing. Jaquinda Jackson and potentially Tre Harris, 53.5. I mean, I don't know. I mean, can this Arkansas offense continue what they did last week? I think a lot of us could admit that a lot of their success was the byproduct of Mississippi State's offense not really being anything, or defense, excuse me. And then, of course, Ole Miss last week, many thought that they would blow Oklahoma out, but they really didn't, right? They let the Sooners kind of sort of hang around, but they were always in control of that game. So let me know what your opinion is of it. One interesting note as well, the home team has also comfortably won the first half, right? That's one big thing as well. So I'm thinking about taking Arkansas first half, starting off well, and then potentially hogging, going to hog. I didn't say that smoothly at all. But let me know what you guys think. Rebels 7-point favorites, and we'll talk to you soon. It is Power Hour SEC. Boom! And I'm actually going to experiment with this. I might do a live stream after the Arkansas Ole Miss game, so make sure you check it out. Tonight, we are doing barbecue chicken alert. Let's go.